What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Nelson back out here again with another video. This video is going to be covering Runeglass as a follow-up to my previous video about gems. Shout out to MarkAx20 who was looking forward to the Runeglass video. I wanted to make sure I got this out for y'all, so big ups to them. This one's for you. So let's talk Runeglass. And there's been multiple people that have asked me to cover this topic and to talk about Runeglass, so that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about Runeglass and when you would want to use it and where you go to craft it and what you do. So Runeglass is located at the Runeglass station inside of Brimstone Sands. It used to be made at the Forge, but now it's made at its own standalone station here in Brimstone Sands. Making a Runeglass will always cost charged sand, sulfur, 2 different types of glyphs, and 3 globs of ectoplasm. These ancient globs of ectoplasm, along with the glyphs, will probably be your most priciest items depending on how rare of one that you want to make. Usually one of them will be pretty cheap and the other one will be kind of expensive. So farming Brimstone Sands for glyphs, and you could check out nwdb.info to find out where to find some of these glyphs if you're trying to make them and you can't find them. It also requires you to be at 180 in weaponsmithing to make these as well. So you definitely want to make sure that you know what you're getting into whenever you start doing Runeglass. Runeglass is a case that can be put around gems. This is more of an in-game type of strat and meant to go into gear that you plan on holding on for a while, in my opinion. Solely mainly because in New World, if you are unaware, you cannot unsocket gems. When you, unlike other games that allow you just to take a gem on and off, in New World, it gets destroyed when it's overwritten. There's no way to just unsocket it. And that is a sad thing, but that is the truth. And you can get really expensive if you're constantly every week socketing and unsocketing gems. That is why having multiple gear sets is also highly beneficial, especially running Runeglass. But once again, I can't reiterate this enough. This should go into BIS weapons and BIS gear that probably won't be changed often for you to put this gear, these different types of augmented Runeglass gems into. So let's talk about the cases themselves and what the cases do. You will see empowered, igniting, freezing, electrified, nature, and they're just what they are. Empowered is the name that they gave for arcane damage, ignited for fire, this is ice, this is lightning damage, and this is nature, of course. And what it does is when you put these casings around a gem, it's going to add that type of elemental augment, whether it is going to be in the form of a dot over time or it's going to be an increase to that particular type of augment damage. For example, let's pick, let's just go with this arcane one here. Let's say we do an empowered amber, okay? An empowered amber, if you read it and what it does, you're still going to get, if it goes on a weapon, the 50-50 split. As long as make sure keep your strength and dex higher. Con isn't a thing that's looked at. So just make sure your dex and or strength is higher than focus here, right? Make sure we got those all so we still get the 50-50 split right. Check out the gem video once again if you want to know what I'm talking about. But then it also adds a 8% arcane damage tick on the weapon as well. So this is kind of like another way to get an attunement on a weapon without having attunement, if you will. So you're going to have this 8% damage if you put it into an actual weapon. Now, when you put in your gear, you get docked that 1% absorption because a amber gem by itself will give you 6. But instead, it takes that 1% absorption and converts it into 2% increase to arcane damage. So if you are using like a flail or something, you're going to see when you put it on your gear, that's going to buff your flail damage for those arcane attacks, right? That's where it's going to come in. And this is, and a lot of players that usually put this in a gear when they put casings like this that are elemental are usually going to be your fire staff players because of this here. Ignited gives you 2% increased fire damage when put on your gear. So a one in which people do is like the opal. You'll see that done a lot where they will do ignited opals in their gear because they can still get the 2%. They still get the 2% elemental damage, but now they also get the 2% fire damage stack. So they'll end up, having that trade-off in order for them to run that on their gear and get 2% fire damage increase, right? Because that is ultimately what they're after as far as the increase on their builds, and they want the build to be versatile, to be able to be used in multiple different activities, where they can just pair this with an amulet of a certain elemental type to still try to make these elemental absorption caps so that they can take less damage in mutations and things of that nature. So this is one you'll see done where you'll put 5 of these in your gear. And keep in mind, your earring, your amulet, and your ring cannot have Runeglass put in them. You cannot socket them yourself. I know there is a piece of jewelry or something through the Brimstones playthrough that there is Runeglass in. That's great. We can't do it. So we cannot put those things in our gear. So just think of it as just your gear you wear is where you can put these gems. So that's 10% there that you can put on to do that. There is also other things like punishing and sighted, which what these basically do is that if you can see, if you were to put this into your weapon, you lose some on, like, you lose 3% on being at full stam, when it normally would be 12, you're down to 9, but now your range attacks do 2% more. Is that worth the trade-off to you guys? We'll see, because you got to remember, when not at full stam, at least the 2% is a full constant, whether you're stammed or whether you have low stam or have full stam or not, right? Some don't mind the trade-off and think it's a good thing. If you put it in your gear, though, you lose 0.5% of that elemental absorption, taking it down from 2.5, what it normally gives you, to 2, but you gain 1% of range damage. So your musket players, your bow players, you'll see them usually do this with, like, your jaspers or your moonstones. They'll do sighted moonstones or punishing moonstones, and they'll do this so that they can have that resistance to strike or slash, but get that increase to their range, right? A way of augmenting their builds. They'll do those things a lot of times as well. On the flip side too of that as well, you will see punishing jaspers, punishing opals, or and stuff like that put into or punishing moonstones put into melee characters to get that still reduction there, but increase their outgoing damage. Bruisers do it a lot. Punishing moonstones, punishing jaspers, you'll see those things done a lot to kind of get that push on that side of it, to increase their outgoing damage while still reducing their incoming damage from those being in those clumps in those fights, right? So that's where the trade-off happens, and that's how you can really make some cool builds and kind of push past some of these limits to give yourself a better augment on your build. So way I look at it always when looking at putting any sort of Runeglass on anything is still the same basis of what do I want the gem to do, but then what do I want my augment to do? And I do on my weapons a lot of diamonds, because diamonds being at full health is the goal in any activity, right? And that we should be in most things that we're doing PvE side. PvP, that's different. That's where opal becomes the choice. We're doing a lot of dodging, a lot of rolling. So they're two different choices, right? And this video is more on the side of a PvE standpoint than it is PvP, but I kind of want to dabble in both because I know some of you have been giving feedback. You want to hear about both. So let's talk about the diamond on the PvE side of the standpoint. I go with this in my weapons a lot. Doing an ignited diamond is going to give me 12% damage at full health, and I get fire damage increase. Or I can put this in my gear, and I can get some physical absorption and some elemental absorption and have fire damage. I would honestly probably never put an ignited diamond in my gear. It always is going on my weapon. If I'm putting any sort of thing on my gear, it's usually going to be, let's say I was a fire staff user, it would be something like an ignited amber, ignited ruby, ignited amethyst, and that would then go under their perspective nature, void, or fire positions as part of my gear, because I want those elemental resist, right? I want the elemental resist that I will gain from having it on there, and then I want that boost in damage, right? So I want to get that 5% ice absorption, and then I want that 2% fire increase. So that is kind of the the nuances of how you got to think about it when you're putting Runeglass in gear. Now let's talk about the secret that I was talking about. You wanted to make sure you want to stick around and listen for. Let's talk about something that people don't bring up much, and I don't see it talked about quite enough that you guys should know. There's a thing in the game called empowerment cap. It's kind of the unspoken, dirty little secrets in New World, which is empowerment cap. What is empowerment cap, you say? Well, if you've seen it quite a bit in the game, you see things like keenly empowered, empowering fireball, empowerment this, empowerment that. Well, there is a cap to how much of that's going to happen. You see here we have empowering fireball. If we just shoot it out, it's 14% increase in damage. But if we hit that target, we're going to get an additional 21%. So impacts deal 14 and an additional 21% to targets above 50% in health, right? So this right here is a huge amount of empowerment. 35% that just shooting this off and hitting targets over 35%. That you're going to get that over 50%, that you're going to get that full 35% in there. Well, if you look at it, Runeglass, all of the Runeglass that you have here, except for your siphons, your punish, your sighted, energize, those do not count towards empowerment cap, but the rest of these do. So this 2% that I am getting on here by putting it on my gear counts towards empowerment cap. 5 pieces of gear, that's 10%. If I have fire harnessing on my gear as well, that's going to give me another 10% if I have them all listed out through there. So let's just say we have harnessing on all our gear. We take the Runeglass too, that's another 10. We're at 20 already. That's a lot, right? So we can even get rid of the harnessing. Let's say, Nelson, you're going out there. Most people run in tuned pants, and most people aren't going to put harnessing on their pants. You're stretching it. So let's get that out the way. Let's just do the 10% from Runeglass. Well, you want to know what else counts for it? Your honing stone, depending on the rarity, anywhere from 4% to 7%, right? If you're using the top tier honing stones, 7%. So that's 17 right there, right? Well, another thing people don't think about, your rings. When you say use fire damage here, that counts also too as well towards your empowerment cap. So now we have 17, and then we add in this additional 7, we're at 24. So you remember what I said earlier about fireball? 35, 24, are we over cap or are we not? We're over already. So when you look at your build, go look at your weapons. When you're running builds like this, especially utilizing Runeglass and things, and think through how quickly you're going to be at cap and be there. You have stuff like Runes of Helios, just shooting off an ability. You're standing inside of this for 20. You're getting 20% extra damage, 20% empowerment already off the rip. So just that alone, plus your fireball, you're already at cap, right? And that's not even taking Runeglass into account. So now there is a 30-second cooldown on it, so maybe that could be a toss-up, right? You look at something like clear casting, though, you get empowerment for 5% as long as you haven't taken an attack in 3 seconds. You get 5% more. Maybe now, since you have so much empowerment, and you're so close, maybe taking something like Watch It Burn makes more sense, because this doesn't have anything to do with empowerment, but you can take advantage of getting more smolder with crits. Because you have taken the empowerment, so you've taken what you need to and made it up with Runeglass. So you need to be very careful and very thoughtful, and need to think with those things such as that. Look at your abilities on stuff like evasive tactics. Evasive tactics, when you roll, with your bow, gain an empowerment for 15%, right? Those things count towards the empowerment cap. Tumbler boots. The 300 being at the dex node for being sorry, not 300, I believe it's 250 dex, sorry. So the 250 dex, when you dodge an attack, you get 10% in empowerment as well too. Those count. So all of these things go into the whole entire mixture of your empowerment caps, and those are the things you finally balance out whenever you're looking at making your builds and you're looking at Runeglass in your builds. Another thing I would tell you guys to look at when you're looking at your Runeglass is put it again on gear that makes sense to put it on. That's all I'm just going to say again. I got to cover it one more time because I just see so many people make the mistake. I really want to hammer that one home. Just make sure you put it in there on things that make sense when you put the Runeglass in there. And also, if it doesn't say empowerment, and I didn't mention it of the ones that accounted, it most likely doesn't. Things on your weapon like the finisher, your safe, the 15% extra to targets that are under bleed, or the increase from the Mjolnir or the other weapons, those things, or your bows and such, those do not count towards empowerment cap. So you're safe with those. But like I said, the finisher buff, the Mjolnir, the bolt caster, anything else, all those other augments, deep freeze where you get more damage to enemies that are in freezing zones, all those are safe for not counting towards empowerment cap. That's what makes them so good, is because it's a way to creep over and it's a way to reach into another part of past the cap of what they say. Your goal should always be to get the cap, stay the cap as much as you can on empowerment cap, and then find things like the finisher, like the deep freeze, like the bolt caster to push you past it that are not counted within the realm of empowerment, but it still gives you more damage. And that's what makes Runeglass good, but it's also something you need to be very careful of thinking out your build, because there could be damage you're leaving on the table just because you aren't thinking about, oh, I can live without this now. Okay, so that's kind of the long and short of it. If I didn't cover something that you guys wanted me to cover in the video, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the video. I just wanted to make sure I got this out to you guys as soon as I could. Thank you guys so much for all the support, man. The videos have been great lately. I'm still learning on trying to get you guys everything you want in these videos, so please be patient with me, and just thank you so much for the support. You can catch me on twitch.tv/BabyFNelson if you have any more questions. But just thank you guys again, and thank you for all the love and the warm comments in the comments. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Your boy is out.